Good morning. Good morning to my colleagues on Rehab and Social Services, and good morning to those joining us in the audience and in the virtual world. The Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee will now come to order. I will ask the clerk to open the roll. Please indicate your presence, colleagues.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, I know many folks have multiple commitments this morning. I will try to be as sensitive to those commitments as possible. There is one housekeeping bill I want to get out of the way right away. House Bill 735, the patron is Rob Bell. This has to do with the earned sentence credit. I'd like a motion to re-refer it to judiciary.
So moved.
Second. Is there a second? There must be a second in here. Okay, will the clerk please open the roll? And I have said.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Ayes 8, noes 5.
Okay, House Bill 735 is re-referred to judiciary. Thank you, Delegate Bell, and thank you for the personal visits. Okay, I do have a few similar bills which I'm going to hold off on, and I will call Delegate Robinson. Delegate Robinson, what would you like to speak to us on? House Bill 1336.
House Bill 1336. I introduced House Bill 1336 as a way to facilitate discussion between the Virginia Craft Brewers Guild, the Virginia Beer Wholesaler Association, the Virginia Wine Wholesaler Association, Virginia Winery Association, and others, to see if the VWDC could take on beer and how to best proceed without impacting their existing operations. It's just to kind of get a working group together to study hang on, I'll get you those little things. The staffing, the IT, the fee schedule, barrel case limits, wine and beer, and appropriate and general appropriation to sustain it if need be. And it's a report that'll be due by October 1st, 2022.
And it's a Section 1 bill?
Yes, it is, ma'am.
Colleagues, do you have any questions? Hearing none, I don't expect you have speakers.
No. Well, I do have people that will speak if there's questions that I can't answer.
I don't think there are any questions. I'm not calling for speakers. This is a straightforward bill, and I would like a motion.
Thank you.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Clerk, please open the roll.
Thank you.
Ayes 13, noes 0.
Thank you, members of the committee. I appreciate it.
Your bill reports.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sean, Senator Morrissey voted aye on that last bill. Please note it. Okay, colleagues, let's go back to similar bills. Delegate Coyner will be here late. She's got a judicial interview meeting. Let's go to House Bill 427. Delegate Herring, and Delegate Herring's bill is similar to Senator Barker's bill 435.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. So I'm sure you're familiar with the bill, but this bill does deal with the Children's Services Act and Community Policy and Family Assessment Planning. The issue is that it is a statewide challenge to maintain required family representation on the management team and the planning teams. The bill will help expand the pool of parent representatives on those teams. And the bill provides that it changed the existing language of the code so that the parent representatives who are employed by a public or private program that receives funds or agencies represented on a community policy and management team may serve as a parent representative on a local community policy and management teams, provided that there are no other parents available. And Madam Chair, there's also an enactment clause that includes that the State Executive Council for Children's Services, which oversees the act-related services and funding, to inventory current efforts regarding recruitment.
Delegate Herring, thank
Yes.
you. We did hear a similar bill and took testimony on Senator Barker's 435. I have a note here that there's a slight difference in terms of the representation, so we would like to conform the bill, and you'll go into conference.
So, we've got to conform first. A second the conforming motion.
Okay, so a motion is before us to slap 435 on your bill, so that's a substitute. All those in favor of the substitute signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Move to report, and there's a second. Please open the roll. Delegate Herring, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Substitute
Thank you.
reports, I'm sure you'll have a good conference.
Thank you.
God, it just was just... Okay, next, do I have Delegate Gudaitis here? Is Delegate Gudaitis here? Come forward, please, and then Speaker Fillercorn will be on deck. Delegate Gudaitis, House Bill 716.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill has, I believe, already been confirmed by House HWI to Senator Mason's, and I can't remember the number of his bill, but it has to do with making it smoothing an appeals process for relatives who want to foster children. So since it has been confirmed there, I want to make sure you are up to date with the substitute. Senator Mason has his thumb up.
Madam Chair,
Senator Mason.
if Mr. May can confirm that Delegate Gudaitis's bill has all of our adjustments to it, and I think it does, then I think actually hers is in the proper form and mine still needs to be done on her side. So,
And this is the one that we're looking at, which was engrossed and passed by the House.
I believe so,
Okay,
Madam
so we
Chair.
want to report hers out?
yeah, well, if Mr. May confirms, I believe so. Yes, ma'am.
So move, Madam Chairman.
Wait 1 second.
Wait 1 second, yeah.
Madam Chair, Senator Mason, that'd be correct. Her bill includes all of your amendments and then 2 additional ones that we've decided we wanted to retain. So we would leave her bill as it is.
Excellent. Thank you,
Yeah,
Delegate.
so moved.
And so second.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, so it would be a motion to report and re-refer to Senate Finance.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator Spruill.
Senator Cosgrove, not Cosgrove, he's my brother. Senator Mason, was his bill referred to finance?
You know, it feels like they all are.
If-
Senator
yeah.
That was my question. My question was, your bill referred to finance? Yeah, every meeting, I'm gonna keep on saying,
Madam Chair.
Senator Hanger, our senior.
Our similar
senior-
bill, we funded this in our budget, so it's not any problem for it.
Yes.
So it's good.
We don't want you to think it's an ominous move by us sending it to Senate Finance. So again, do I have a motion? Senator Spruill, do you want to make a motion to report and re-refer to Finance now that we've
I so move
clarified?
referred to finance.
And Senator Boysko, okay. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Yes, sir.
Ayes 15, noes 0.
Thank
Your
you, Madam
bill
Chair, members
reports.
of the subcommittee.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Speaker Fillercorn. This is not on our similar list, but you are here. And it's House Bill 717, and it's a new bill, a bill this committee has not heard. Please.
Thank you very much, Madam
Ms.
Chair and
Thank
members of the
you.
committee. So you have before you HB 717, and this is a new bill for you all. So what this bill focuses on really are unaccompanied youth. So homeless youth who are 14 years of age or older and unaccompanied, meaning without a parent, without a guardian. What this bill does is focuses on providing them housing in emergency situations. So they have the ability with this bill, actually, I'll start by saying that this bill passed unanimously in the House. And it's, we've spent a lot of time working with a lot of organizations, stakeholders, and other groups, and there's a lot of support for this bill. So unaccompanied homeless youth are people young people who are experiencing homelessness, who are not in the physical custody of their parent or guardian. And as I mentioned in the House, over 4 million youth and young adults nationally experience homelessness. But what's striking really is the youth homelessness here in the Commonwealth of Virginia is really a crisis. Our public schools have identified over 20,000 students that have experienced homelessness back in 2019, and 3,000 of those students are actually unaccompanied. So what happens with these students and these young people is often they have obviously nowhere to live. They will find themselves in the middle of a crisis, often thrown out of wherever they are, sleeping on a couch and whatnot. And if this crisis occurs in the middle of a night on a Friday or a Saturday, they have no place to live, no place to stay, and they tend to be victimized. And I think most commonly, unaccompanied youth is caused by family dysfunction. It's caused by exacerbated by poverty. And when accompanied youth cannot find secure, safe housing or shelter, they are very vulnerable to victimization. Also, homelessness, as you know, is associated with 87% likelihood of dropping out of school. And the other issue, too, is that this is tied directly to human trafficking, because what happens is they're at a higher risk should they not be with parents or in a shelter and a guardian for labor and sex trafficking, assault, and other types of victimization. So due to consent requirements, most unaccompanied youth are unable to find shelter. And so by passing HB 717, we would be making a major step towards combating trafficking for homeless youth, 14 years of age or older. And this has already been done in many different states. It provides an opportunity for the youth to access homeless services, including emergency shelter, when they don't have parental consent. There's certain documentation, acceptable documentation that's in the bill that you'll see, including a signed statement certifying their situation, making sure that we know and that the social services know that they're unaccompanied youth. There's also many guide rails that are also in this bill to protect the vulnerable population. There are required attempts to make sure they're contacting the parents to see if there are any parents or guardians in the situation. Also, development of a registration of organizations and individuals who can provide the shelter, and they're also checking simultaneously with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. There is a fiscal impact as well.
Yes, we do have a note. It should go to
Yep.
Finance. Speaker Philicorn, did you ask folks to speak? Do you have speakers lined
We
up?
do. We've got several organizations and stakeholders. I'm not sure if they're in the room or if they're
Okay, let me
virtual.
ask speakers to come forward. I'd like you to take a minute each. This is the first time we've heard the bill. It's important. Ms.
Madam
LaRue,
Chair,
1
good
minute.
morning.
Good morning. Nice to have you here with us.
Thank you. Valerie LaRue from the Virginia Poverty Law Center, and we support this bill. As Delegate Philicorn has said, these are very vulnerable youth who are vulnerable to being victimized. The bill went through a lot of discussion in the House about various issues that were concerning to members of the House committees that it was in front of. And I think that the changes that were made to the bill have resolved those concerns. They were things like contacting the parents, who was going to be the person who let the shelter know that it wasn't unaccompanied youth, all those kinds of things. So I think that the House amendments have addressed those concerns, and with those concerns, we feel like this creates an important safety stopgap for certain gaps that young people can fall in. So thank you.
Yes, it does sound like a very helpful bill. Is there anybody else currently in the audience wishing to speak in favor? Anybody in the audience wishing to oppose the bill?
Madam Chair, we do have 3 people online.
Thank you, and I will ask that the speakers online, they are in support. If you could keep your comments to less than a minute, that would be helpful. Go ahead and open the virtual world.
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in support of the bill, would they raise their hand now? Allison Gilbreth, would you go ahead and unmute and begin your testimony?
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Allison Gilbreth with Voices for Virginia's Children. I am in support of this bill. I'm sorry, my children are walking in.
We hear you.
Apologies to the committee. I will be brief and just say that I want to reiterate that we have worked in support with Delegate Philicorn and many members of the Foster Care Policy Network. All 32 organizations are in support of this bill, and we find it to be very supportive for children. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker.
Rod Montz, would you please unmute and begin your testimony?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Rod Montz. I'm Director of State Policy for Schoolhouse Connection. We're a national nonprofit that works to eradicate homelessness for youth through education and access to other supportive services. We support this bill because we believe it's strong legislation. There are states that have similar legislation, and we believe this bill stacks up amongst the best of them. Speaker Philicorn really did a good job of covering the important issues related to this topic. I'll only add that, there are 3,000 unaccompanied homeless youth that we know about, and there's an issue with trying to get these children that access they need to housing and supportive services, because in many cases they're sort of invisible. They're not the kids you would see in a shelter or living outdoors, and it's important that we have a mechanism for identifying those who are truly unaccompanied and without resources, because as the speaker said, there are a lot of people who take advantage of these kids who have no adults in their lives.
Thank
So
you
we
for your comment.
to support the bill.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Alex Wagaman, would you please unmute and begin your testimony?
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Alex Wagaman. I am a co-chair of the Youth Housing Stability Coalition here in Richmond. Have about 30 member organizations that provide direct services or advocacy for youth trying to end youth homelessness, as well as young people with lived experience of homelessness in Richmond, and we are in support of this bill. The only thing I'd like to highlight and add is that currently our schools and our service providers really struggle to serve this population because we are out of alignment with federal regulations that require, for example, schools to educate young people who are unaccompanied and experiencing homelessness. But our state policy doesn't align with that. And so service providers actually can't serve those young people without consent of a parent or guardian. And so this would bring us into alignment, be able to provide holistic services and care to these young people, and be able to draw down federal dollars that we have not been able to access. So thank you.
That is very important. Thank you so much. We'll be following this in the implementation of this. I believe we only have 2 additional speakers in the virtual world. If you would like to briefly indicate your support.
Narissa Rahman, would you please unmute?
Hi, yes, good morning, committee members. My name is Narissa Rahman, Executive Director of Equality Virginia, and we are here in support of House Bill 717.
Thank you. Last speaker.
Carl Polzer, would you please unmute? Carl Polzer, would you please unmute? Carl Polzer, last call. Madam Chair, those are all the speakers at this time.
Thank you. Colleagues, do you have questions
for
Speaker
Madam Chairman?
Philicorn? Yes, Senator McDougal.
This a very good thought, but questions I had were in that section D.
Mm-hmm.
So this is more just like technical logistics. So do we have any, determines the contacting parent, there's a couple questions, determines the contacting the parent or guardian is not in the best interest of the youth. Do we have a best interest determination, or is that going to be a different determination in every jurisdiction?
Madam Chair, let me see. You are
yes,
at
Speaker
D.
Philicorn. I think he's on line 34. Is that correct, Senator McDougal?
The provider is unable to.
I pulled up the highlighted version, so I'll switch to the PDF.
I've got the House substitute.
30.
I believe that is defined.
Just.
I can ask our counsel.
Maybe if counsel could assist, I think.
Mr. May.
Madam Chair, Senator McDougal, we obviously have best interest standards throughout the code, though I'm not sure that any of those would apply particularly to this situation. I think there's probably a lot of discretion that the provider would have to make that determination. I don't think they'd be bound by the standards we impose, for instance, on circuit courts when making that decision.
So the provider, follow-up question, Speaker Fillicorn, I read that to mean the provider would have criteria or some general guidelines on how to determine what's in the best interest.
Madam Chair and Senator McDougall, absolutely, and also in conjunction with the homeless liaison as well. So if you see that they're also, in addition to, there's other steps that they're taking, and they're working with in conjunction with the homeless liaison. And the homeless liaison obviously can also be individuals who are aware that the youth is actually unaccompanied.
Okay, very good.
Madam Chairman.
Senator McDougall.
The next would be on line 38. And I guess the way I read that is if they figure out that the child has been reporting missing, would it not be better if we just say that the provider has to report the unaccompanied youth to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and to local law enforcement to determine, instead of saying if determined, then will be reported? Because
That makes some sense.
logistically, I don't know
That
if they
makes
don't
sense.
make that report, how they would ever ascertain that to be the case.
Right, you're trying to close the loophole because it would be
I mean,
possible.
if the provider determines that the child is missing, or upon their contact with the missing and exploited.
Madam Chairman,
Senator
it
McDougall.
looks like the way this is, the wording on this is, if they get some information that the child is missing, would it not be a better practice for us to say that each of the unaccompanied youth that are going through this particular process, to help them out, would be reported to the National Center and to local law enforcement to determine if they are on the list as missing, or determined if they've been reported missing?
Just as a follow-up, Senator McDougall, may I ask you a question? Would you yield?
Yes.
So what you would be saying then is, if a child presented itself as unaccompanied, all that would be needed for the provider then to be required to refer to law enforcement or missing children. Is that your intent?
Yes, Madam Chairman, that's why it seems like that is a safer way for us to go, to make sure, because my guess is that a lot of these children really, really need help, but there could be an example of a child not being missing, or there being something else going on, and somebody is looking and.
Would you accept that as a friendly amendment, Speaker Phillips?
I believe so. So I'm also looking, we have a few different things going on here. So also under there's in the second enactment.
Yes.
It's also, we also are setting up, the Board of Social Services will develop regulations moving forward. So I think that may be taken care of in that enactment. And we can, obviously, this is going to be further discussed. If you look at lines 56 through
59.
Through 59. So that's part of the reason, Madam Chair and Senator McDougall. I think, the Board of Social Services will be developing regulations moving forward, with regard to all this. I don't think there's a problem with that, but I think all of this will be taken care of. I mean, obviously, the goal here is to help an unaccompanied youth who are literally, victimized on a daily basis every day we wait.
Yes.
And so part of the thought behind this was helping in emergency circumstances immediately, and then moving forward also, as you see in the second enactment clause, and establishing a working group which include the homeless liaison folks and also social services, so that we can move forward and develop
I
regulations.
think we'll still need the enactment clause. There'll still be
Yes.
plenty of things
Absolutely.
to write recommendations on. But I am sympathetic to Senator McDougall's point, so I'll ask.
So, Madam Chair,
David,
what would the language be? Yes.
Well, I'll
Madam
ask
Chair-
David May to craft it.
David's probably better at this on the fly than I am, but just say that I would just say that the provider shall report the child to the National Center on Missing and Exploited Children, and contact local law enforcement. I would just probably shorten that sentence, just.
Right, and again, the expectation would be once the child presents himself.
Madam Chair?
Let me ask David May.
Madam Chair?
Well, are you still, excuse me, Senator Boysko. David May, are you crafting something? Okay.
Madam Chair, yeah, I think we could, it's going to require a couple line amendments, but essentially the language with the several line amendments would read something to the extent of, the provider shall report to local law enforcement and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in order to determine whether the child has been reported missing or that a report has been filed with the National Center.
That's fair.
Madam Chair.
Senator Boysko.
Before we move forward with that, in line 17, it's clearly that the child has already been identified by the local agency, and that person already serves as a liaison for homeless children and youth. And my interpretation of this bill is saying that I would imagine, and perhaps somebody knows what a local agency is already required to do, but this to me seems like they've already identified the child, they have seen that the child needs housing, and this bill is just intending to provide the ability for that child to have housing. Is that?
Madam Chair and Senator Boysko, that's exactly right. And we have in here, as you'll see, and I can point to all the places where we list the homeless liaison. Homeless liaison are trained. These are individuals that are trained to identify and recognize the difference. So,
Senator McDougal's amendment doesn't in any way affect the services to be provided to the child. Senator McDougal's amendment is merely ensuring, as I understand it, that the fact that the child presents himself or herself as missing, that is reported to the missing children's, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which I think is an advantage. He's trying to take away the discretion of whether or not that's reported. Now, if there's a problem with that concept, that's what we should be talking about.
Madam Chair,
Senator Boysko.
my question is just, wouldn't that already be done when they present themselves to the homeless liaison? And I guess that would be the question. I certainly agree we want to make sure that the child is reported,
Right.
but I would just make a guess that would already be.
Let me ask
Absolutely.
David May, as
Madam Chair, if we
following
can have
this conversation, where would you interpret this?
Madam Chair, I don't, there's no requirement certainly in this bill that the liaison conduct that. If they're required under this federal statute that I would have to look at to do that, then it would be covered. But if it's not in that federal rule, it's not in this bill.
Right.
Madam Chair, if the attorney, so what would the, if you don't mind, if the attorney could please read the recommended
Yes, we would
line
not,
amendments.
of course, ask you to accept an amendment. You don't know what it says. David May, are you ready to guide us?
Madam Chair, so we would look down at line 38. We would, after child period, we would strike if the and insert the with a capital T. And then after provider, we would strike determines that and insert report to local law enforcement and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in order to determine whether, and then it continues with current language, the child has been reported missing or that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has a record of the child being reported missing by a legal guardian. Following that, you would strike the remainder of the sentence.
So you're just, okay, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, it says right here, the provider should also contact local law enforcement. I hear what you're saying. It's just moving that up.
It's moving, that's right.
Yes, I consider that a friendly amendment.
I moved that amendment.
I thank you. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. I also considered that to be friendly, and I will just say that the intent of this is for temporary services as well. So that makes it even more important that every effort be made for the child to connect to a family.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other comments on this bill? And I thank you for your eagle eyes. Amendment has been made. I would like a motion.
Madam Chair.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one hopefully quick cleanup item just to make sure that we're not drawing or inferring under emergency disaster laws under subsection C lines 27. It says no provider shall provide housing including emergency shelter basically unless they're registered with the department. And obviously, our emergency disaster law under Chapter 3.2, I just asked council if there's maybe a cleaner way to just, as otherwise provided in the law, to make sure it's exempted out, and we're not actually looking at the local rec center and American Red Cross to all of a sudden be certified by the department under disaster law. Is there a way to quickly clean that up?
Madam Chair, Senator McPike, yeah, I think we could cover, there are multiple different sections of the code that deal with emergency shelter. So, well, it would require an amendment possibly on line 27 after C period, strike no, insert except as otherwise permitted by law, comma, no, and then continue with the current language.
I'd move the amendment.
Speaker Philicorn, you must view that as a technical
Yes,
cleanup.
yes, Madam
Okay.
Chair, Senator McPike, thank you. I accept
Yeah.
that friendly amendment.
Yeah, that's, I would agree with that. Okay, all those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, as amended. Okay, the bill as amended to be reported and re-referred to finance. Motion has been made and seconded. Will the clerk open the roll? I've got Morrissey, thank you.
Thank
Ayes
you.
15, no 0.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Okay, who's next in line? Delegate Orrick.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the subcommittee.
Thank you.
If you give your attention, please, to House Bill 917, it's very straightforward. This is relating to financial assistance for those needing aging services. We had put in code a couple years back, social needs as a factor in that. This just makes sure we prioritize economic needs, and then social needs come in as a secondary prioritization. That's all the measure does.
I read your bill, and I did not have a problem with it at all.
I'm glad to hear that, Madam Chair.
You have no speakers here.
Okay.
And I enjoyed my time before your committee yesterday. Okay. A motion has been made and seconded to report the bill. All those in favor, please open the roll, clerk.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, who else is with us? Delegate Willett. And your bill passed the House 100 to 0. We're looking at House Bill 388.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I do have an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Okay. All those in favor of the substitute signify by saying aye. And this is a straightforward 3-line bill, but now it's changing.
Just a little bit, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm glad it's not growing to a 9-page bill.
No, and I can just give you a quick explanation if that would help.
Yes, is the substitute posted? Yes. Okay, thank you. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Sure, he gets that.
Okay. The director of every state facility shall establish a process to facilitate visual visitation. Is that your substitute? Through the
Yes.
use of audio and video equipment for individuals receiving services at the facility. Okay, that's an improvement, actually.
Madam Chair, that's absolutely it. And just to quickly summarize why we made this change, we worked with the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services to make sure we were not running up against any current regulations on the working with the care team for these individuals who are in our mental health facilities. This language clarifies that, so we're not running afoul of that. So I think we're good on that end. Just wanted to quickly mention the reason for this bill really is a positive result that came out of this terrible pandemic. Number of families were unable to visit with loved ones in interstate facilities. Some folks I met, the Polsers, were able to work with Western State as one of the first examples of a facility that allowed virtual visitation during the pandemic, set up on Kindles or iPads so that they could communicate with their family member who was in the facility. Other facilities adopted this. The thought of the bill now is to make this enabled going forward. so that all the facilities can do it. Behavioral health is coordinated with facilities. The equipment is in place. They're actually doing this at most of the facilities right now. This just codifies what's already in practice.
I think it's a great bill. Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm looking at the bill. It says that the director of every state facility shall, and it goes on. There's not a timeline in this. So is this just an open-ended, whenever they feel like it, get around to it, whatever?
Delegate Willett.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Cosgrove, it is the current practice right now, so it's essentially codifying what they're already doing. I guess to answer your question, it is an open timeframe, but it is in progress.
So we just want to ensure that all the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed. That is the purpose.
Exactly, Madam Chair. Just in case someone had a question in the future, is this something we can do? This says no, this is absolutely.
Let me ask the clerk in terms of time frame. My understanding is if it would be effective by July 1 of 2022. Is that correct? Just based on our standard practice.
Madam Chair, that would be correct.
So they'd have to have this in place by July 1, 2021, or if this takes effect, they have to start doing it July 1, 2022.
Madam Chair, I believe that it would take effect on July 1st. So arguably, if anyone doesn't have a process in place, they'd know this is coming down the pipe. They would probably begin, but they wouldn't be required to begin that until July 1st.
So that would be a time frame, but there's no limit in terms of they have to have it done by a certain time.
Right.
Okay, does that add clarity?
Move report.
Okay, very good. Motion has been made and seconded. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Ayes 15, no 0.
Your bill reports, Delegate Willett.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, just see what else we're doing here. Delegate Helmer. We have not heard this bill before, colleagues. It's House Bill 484. Delegate Helmer.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. In front of you, you have House Bill 484. Last year, we passed House Bill 1820, which recognized higher education as a qualifying activity, which we had already done at the executive level, but just codified it. Higher education as a qualifying activity for work, for SNAP, and for TANF. So passed that unanimously last year. We did that because we want to encourage people to get an education, become independent of public benefits, and great progress. The one problem is for TANF, we require that those who are pursuing education participate in the VIEW program, which is generally a really good program, but is geared towards getting a GED. The practical effect of the problem with that is that the VIEW program has a 2-year limit, even though that's not imposed on us federally. And so this bill is pretty straightforward. All it does is say we're going to remove, not require folks going to an institution of higher education to participate in the VIEW program. That essentially puts TANF in the same posture as SNAP for students getting a secondary degree, means that they're far more likely to graduate from a 4-year program if that's what they're doing, and therefore not be dependent on public benefits in the future. Allowed by federal law, essentially right now we're leaving money on the table and we're pulling the rug out from under these students. I don't think that was ever our intention, and so this bill simply fixed that. Madam Chair, members of the committee, there are folks here to testify if you'd like, but also I'm happy to take any questions.
We could take, I will take brief testimony. I think we understand the bill. Those who are in favor, just come forward and say why you're in favor very briefly.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Julia Billingsley with Virginia 21. This bill makes an important change for our post-secondary TANF recipients that ensures that they can continue receiving this assistance through their educational completion and ultimately encourages entry to the workforce, and we are very supportive of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor? Anybody who is opposed in the audience? Anybody in the virtual world who is either in favor or opposed?
For those individuals in the Zoom who would like to speak in support or opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Madam Chair, there's no hands raised at this time.
Thank you.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, question before you do that.
Yes, Senator Spruill.
Delegate, this morning you came in early with an extra pair of shoes. You all right? You have a...
Madam Chair, I'd answer the senator that I was just getting ready to run if something went wrong on this committee. So.
Thank you, sir.
A motion has been made to report and re-refer to finance. It's been seconded. Will the clerk open the roll, please?
Ayes 14, noes 0.
Okay, your bill reports, and it's on its way to finance, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Madam Chair, I hope you're right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, let's see, we're doing a great job. Delegate Sickles.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I have a bill that is also SNAP related. It's HB 1270, and all it does is allow incarcerated persons who are soon to be released to apply for SNAP benefits so they are available the day they leave, and hunger is not an immediate problem once they leave incarceration. That's what the bill does, and it is a Section 1 bill, I think, before you.
It is a Section 1 bill.
Because we made it a Section 1 bill in a House Appropriations on the request of the Department of Social Services. And that's the concept. When people leave incarceration, they have two problems, mainly housing and food. And this allows the food problem to be immediately addressed upon leaving.
This is a very good bill. Senator Boysko, do you have
Thank
a motion?
you. I move that we report the bill.
Okay, motion has been made. It has to be re-referred to finance. Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Please open the roll.
Thank you.
Oh, it was my fault. Okay, your bill reports and is re-referred to finance.
I think I'll get Emmett later. So,
We'll get Emmett.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Delegate Murphy.
Good morning.
Good morning. Delegate Murphy, is it House Bill 1334?
1134, or yeah, 1334.
1334
I've got,
we have.
got
Okay.
too many bills.
Go ahead.
House Bill 1334 expands protections for victims of child abuse and neglect by holding the intimate partner of the child's parent legally accountable, by amending the definition of abused or neglected child to include a child who is sexually exploited or abused by an intimate partner of the child's parent or caretaker. The bill allows a complaint of child abuse or neglect to be deemed valid by the local Department of Social Services in such instances. The existing code at this time, only the parent or other person who has a legal responsibility for the child can be investigated for claims of abuse, and this bill corrects that.
Okay. Do you have any speakers?
No.
Okay. Any questions for the patron? Okay, very good. It does not have to go to finance. It's a straightforward bill. Motion has been made and seconded. Will the clerk open the roll?
Ayes 14, noes 0.
Very
Thank
good.
you,
Your
Madam
bill
Chair.
reports. Very good. Okay. Yes, you'll have to contact Delegate Coiner. She does have a substitute.
All right, one moment, please, Madam Chair.
Can I move as a substitute? Okay, thank you.
And I can even explain the substitutes.
Okay, can I move it so we can post it? Is it just your bill?
It's my bill with a substitute, but we basically have worked it out. Do you want, I can go over, I can tell you, yes. Thank you. Substitute has been moved and seconded. Ladies and gentlemen, this is on House Bill 277. David? Yes, it is my substitute. Thank you. And I can explain it, and she would be quite happy to have me explain it.
Just tell us what the differences were.
Okay, so the difference in this substitute that you have not seen before, my bill did not have language on any zoning requirement. The substitute before you will allow local governments to, by right, allow recovery homes up to 8 individuals by right. They can also expand that number if they so choose, if they want to expand the by right option. That would be optional if they go above the 8. There's also a square footage. I think it's 50 square feet per person per bed. That is in one section of the code. And the only other difference in the substitute is we talk about individuals with if they've diagnosed, we took out the word diagnosed, but if they're recovering from a substance abuse, then they would be in a credentialed home.
Madam Chair?
Senator DeStef, and I would like to go ahead.
Madam Chair, I don't disagree with what you're trying to do here with this substitute. My concern comes from where you're talking to a recovery resident or an adult, basically, in a square footage requirement of 50 feet, which is basically 10 feet by 5 feet. So you could basically get 8 people in one room, and that's kind of where my concern comes in. I know we have Vets House and a couple of other organizations like that in Virginia Beach. We have it where they have a much larger square footage per person. I'm not sure, and again, I'm not trying to hurt the bill. I think it's a great concept, great idea. My concern is we're down to 50 square feet, which is 10 feet by 5 in a room where they're sleeping, and that's my only concern with this.
Let me ask, we had a different drafter, Jeff Sharp drafted this, but Mr. May, there was a question with the stakeholder groups regarding the 50 square feet. Would you read this to be in addition to the current building code, or the 50 square feet would be replacement, basically?
Madam Chair, so I don't think it necessarily has so much to do with the building code so much as it does with the zoning regulations. I think what this is basically just saying is that we're going to treat these places as single-family residential occupancy as long as you have 50 square feet per bed.
Per sleeping room.
So it's more of a zoning issue about how they treat it, where these can be located.
Madam Chairman?
Madam Chair, if I can, just one last
Senator DeStef.
point on this. Madam Chair, what we put in legislation always trumps the building code. So my concern here is we're putting it down to basically a 10-foot by 5-foot per bed. And again, I understand when people are going through recovery. I've worked with a lot of individuals going through that. When you put them down to such a tight space and restricted space, then you're opening it up to have problems. When we work with Vets House, you have a 10 by 12 room that you have only 2 individuals in there. Actually, it's one individual in a 10 by 12 room. So my concern is you're talking about 10 feet by 5 feet, and it's really, really tight. And I have just concerns that not only are we trumping building code with this, we're kind of setting a precedence that's going to be in little tiny pods.
We do understand.
And that's my true concern with
so
this.
let me go back to Mr. May. how would you, I mean, I understand completely where Senator DeSteph is, and we've had this conversation, we've gone round and round with stakeholders. We don't want to set, we're setting a floor. Will this trump everything else that would be in any health and safety codes? Essentially.
Madam Chair, I don't know that it would trump any a health and safety code, but what it would trump is any sort of local zoning ordinances that would currently prohibit this practice. I think Senator DeSteff's concern is more about the square footage. So what you're looking at is, as long as you have 400 square feet of bed space, then you can have 8 people there, and that's going to be treated as a single-family residential.
And if it's, and may I just add that the way this is structured is if a locality decides that up to 8, they have to allow up to 8 by right. Anything, if they adopt the 8 by right, anything above that would have to go back to they'd have to get approval from the Board of Supervisors. So that's where they could get into, we're not going to allow more than 10 or 12 because of individuals, because of the impact on streets or because of the impact on parking or because we don't think it's a good health and safety code. Is that a correct interpretation, Mr. May?
Madam Chair, yeah, I think the way it would work is that if you're, if you're 8 or below, then under the terms of the bill, there's not going to be any leeway for the locality. The only leeway for the locality would be to say, if they want to go up above that,
that's right,
and they'd make that decision by right, then that would be permitted. But under the terms of the bill, if you're 8 or under and you got 400 square feet of bed space,
correct,
then they have to treat the 8-person house as single-family occupancy.
Right. But if it's more than 8 individuals, this would, again, depending on what the county ordinance says.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. Delegate Coiner, we're having a conversation on the substitute. I explained the substitute. Senator DeSteph is very concerned about this 50 square feet per bed per sleeping room.
Madam Chairman.
Senator McDougal, and then we'll allow you to speak, and then.
If I'm, and this is maybe for David, if I'm reading this line 32 the way it's drafted, you have to certify the entity verifies 50 square feet of bed per sleeping room. But, so if you had a room and there was 50 feet, you could actually put more beds. I don't know what 50 square feet per bed per sleeping room means. If it's 50 square feet of, I mean, that means the bed's got to be 50 feet? I mean, that's the way it reads. I don't know that that was the intent, but I think the question, the ultimate question I'm having is you can have a larger house, and if you had 2 rooms, you could put all these beds right next to each other in 2 rooms as long as you had 8 or less. There's nothing the locality can say or do about that.
With this 50 square feet in there. Delegate Coiner, could you respond to that? And then I will turn to some senators.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a national standard for recovery residences. That's where this language came from. So the national standard is based on the number of beds you can provide as a recovery residence and the safe amount of individual sleeping space, bedroom space per person in that household. So the reason we added it was because we did see in some localities, we saw photos where some bad actors put up temporary partitions to fit more people in a bedroom space in a house than is deemed safe or appropriate. And so this standard came from the National Recovery Residence Standards. When you take in individuals, you are required as one of those certification requirements to have a bed and sleeping room space. And so that is part of when you look at being certified, part of that standard that you have to meet in order to be a recovery residence.
And this is a floor.
It is a minimum, that is correct.
Okay. Senator Cosgrove, Senator Sproul, and then Senator McPike.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, and then Senator Boysko, moving forth. I apologize, I didn't see everybody lined up. Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just, maybe I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but, so what we're saying here is that anybody that has any abode with this type of space, no matter where they're located within a city or a county, by right, can operate a recovery facility. Is that a correct assessment? Whoever.
Mr. May.
Madam Chair, Senator Cosgrove. So we're not necessarily saying that you can be anywhere you want. You'd be limited by the rules that are currently in place for single-family residential occupancy, but you would be treated like any other home that was considered single-family residential.
All right, follow up.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. So if you're in a neighborhood and basically lots of folks around there, they bought these homes, all of a sudden, either to your right or to your left or across the street, without any input by the local governing board, somebody can basically turn their home into a recovery center. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Senator Cosgrove, that's correct.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, well, that's what we're facing now. Senator Sproul, I had called on you next, and then Senator McKnight,
Thank you, Madam
and then
Chair.
Senator Boysko.
Mr. May, so you asked before that this would supersede the authority of local government?
Madam Chair, Senator Sproul, it would supersede local government to the extent that they were classifying them under a different zoning classification other than single-family residential occupancy for residences with 8 or fewer. Now they would be prohibited from doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator McKnight.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to clear up the discussion from earlier on the 50 square feet. It's part of our state unified building code. So it's already required minimum 70 square feet for a bedroom to qualify. And then if multiple individuals, it's 50 square feet. And that's our current uniform statewide building code. So that's what it's lifting from.
That's correct.
So it's not creating anything new. That's the standard that exists in our building code.
Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question in the bill, and I mean no harm to it. I appreciate what you're doing, but where you are pointing out one specific entity called Oxford House Incorporated numerous times in the bill, I'm a little confused and not familiar with our tradition of naming specific companies or wondering if you could help clarify that.
Sure. Madam Chair, in Virginia, our two current largest organizations that are doing certifications are through the National Alliance for Recovery Residences, which has a state affiliate which is handling those. And those are for recovery residences that have additional support. So staff support and additional supports provided. The other largest certifying entity that DBHDS follows is the Oxford House, which is non-staff support. What the goal of the bill is to do two-part. One, to disclose to families of the different types of model that you're entering, but also to start to narrow what we saw when a lot of the ARPA and other funds entered our state. A whole bunch of other actors from outside of Virginia started showing up. We've seen some overdoses and deaths and some bad things happening where we didn't have oversight. So while these two are the largest, and we are able to follow their certifications, and we included a position at DBHDS to try to follow up and follow these certifications, with our ultimate goal of the state really being able to oversee what's happening with those. I would also say, in regards to some of the questions about residential recovery homes, these are not treatment facilities. No one is receiving any treatment, which is a more commercial type use. These homes have been given protections in fair housing like everyone else. It is a home situation for folks who need a clean place to live. So there really isn't any other appropriate place for individuals who need to live together in a residence. It is a single family residence, but we have done our best to limit so that localities can use the same number cap that they've used for other types of group homes in their communities if they so choose. but we haven't made it where they cannot. If certain localities would like, if there's a larger home, to give that flexibility, we've allowed them to do that. But we have been told by DBHDS and those who are in these communities that some consistency across the state as they're looking to help individuals would be important.
And I guess the broader picture here is we do have a lack of these recovery beds. And we do have significant demand for people who need community-based services. Senator Boyce.
Madam Chair, I guess my question is, I appreciate and I am very supportive, but I'm just wondering, and council might be able to answer, is it appropriate to specifically name the organizations in our code? Because this lasts for many, many years. And
Mr. May, why don't you respond and then I'll respond.
Madam Chair, Senator Boysko, there are other instances in the code in which we name specific organizations. So I would say that precedent has definitely been set. And I would just say further that right now, these are the two main players. And the reason that we need to put them in the code is because one is self-governed, unstaffed, and one is not necessarily. And the point is that to give them notice when they're going in, as to whether they're going to be in control of themselves or whether they're going to have someone there helping them.
Thank you. And I should note that these two organizations, Oxford Home and the National Recovery Residences, are officially designated by the Department of Behavioral Health to do credentialing. So they actually have an official role. Senator McPike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this might be a question for council for recovery residence definition, and maybe the patron might know as well. I think I'd called and talked to you about it, which is the lines 59 to 60 says all recovery residents housing individuals shall be certified. Line 46 defines recovery residence, and that definition basically is any place that provides alcohol-free, illicit drug-free housing with any comorbidity, et cetera, without treatment. How does that conflict with a homeless shelter? And how is that resolved or not resolved by these definitions? Because you can see where a general homeless shelter of a community meets that definition now as recovery residents. How do we make sure that there's no conflict? I know it came up in testimony before. How is that resolved in this, or is there no conflict?
Mr. May.
You can tag team.
Madam Chair, Senator McPike, I don't think I can give you a good answer on that. I think the definition of recovery residence is very, very broad. So I wouldn't say there's not a possibility that could happen.
I can.
We do not amend the definition of recovery residence. I would note that that's existing law.
Delegate Coiner.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right.
So we had this conversation with DBHDS about what's considered single family and what's considered through the certification process for the purposes of this definition in this bill. And they are not included in the same context as the single family use for purposes of recovery residents here. So they are treated differently by DBHDS.
Madam Chair, follow-up.
Yes, Senator McPike.
Thank you. That's not what this says, though. I understand the applicability of what DBH is doing, but being that recovery residence is existing code, but we're now including a new requirement that every recovery residence shall be certified. I mean, this is where these come at sort of loggerheads. So how do we?
Mr. May.
Mr. May's flinching over here. Yeah, he might have a solution. I don't know.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Senator McPike, okay, how about this? How about we take the language from subsection D on lines 59 and 60 of the substitute, which say that you have to be certified by the department under regulations of the board. Take that language and put it into the definition of recovery residence. So you still get your certification language and you narrow your definition of recovery residence to residences that are certified by the department, so that you don't loop in anyone else.
That would work.
Move the amendment.
Thank you. Okay, amendment has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, colleagues, unless we want to discuss this further.
Move to report.
Well, It's amended, okay? So the motion before us is to report the substitute as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Ayes 9, noes 3, abstentions 3.
Ayes 9, no 3. We still have time to talk about this because my bill goes to the House. So I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Your bill
Madam
reports.
Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Coiner. Mine's different. I don't have any of these on there. Yeah, no, I. I do too. Okay, so. Okay, colleagues, I believe that completes our docket. Unless I have missed something, I will ask Mr. May if he never misses anything. I see nothing else on the docket for today. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct. Are we done for the year, Madam Chairman?
Colleagues, I think this concludes our work for the year. Is that true?
Accepting a referral, we have finished the docket of all bills on the committee.
All right, so we're not expecting to meet again.
We're not expecting to meet again.
Colleagues, thank you for your hard work and dedication. It is a pleasure working with you.